Who gets to vote in our elections? A report by a pressure group is doing the rounds in Westminster and it sparked outrage. It proposes that more than 4.4 million adults, including those who come to the UK illegally, should get the right to vote. And later on, I'll be joined by a legendary TV interviewer known for her conversations with Nelson Mandela and Amy Winehouse. But tonight, she'll be opening up about her final and most haunting encounter with Virginia Giuffre. Well, of course, I want to hear your thoughts on all of this. Get in touch, gbnews.com/your say. Now, let's get your latest headlines with Sophia Wensler.
Chris, thank you. It's just gone 7 o'clock. These are your headlines. The President of the EU Council and the Portuguese Prime Minister have said there's no indication that a cyber attack caused a massive power cut that plunged Spain and Portugal into chaos, with trains halted, traffic lights out and millions cut off from Wi-Fi, 5G and card payments. The Spanish Prime Minister says the cause is still being investigated, while Portugal's grid operator said there were claims of a rare atmospheric phenomenon that caused the cuts. Meanwhile, some staff at a hotel in Spain have been spotted with their own inventive way of getting through the power cut. They've been pictured using a barbecue to cook while the electricity is down. It's understood power has been restored to some areas in the north and south of Spain, while Portugal believes it could take up to a week for normal service to resume. Donald Trump has demanded a permanent ceasefire in Ukraine after Vladimir Putin announced a 3-day pause in fighting ahead of Russia's Victory Day celebrations next week. The ceasefire will run from midnight on the 7th of May to midnight on the 10th of May, with Russian forces told to halt all military action. But Moscow has warned it will respond if Ukraine breaches the truce. Meanwhile, trade talks between the United States and Britain are moving in a positive direction, according to the White House. White House spokesperson Caroline Leavitt told reporters, "As for the trade talks, I understand they are moving in a very positive way with the United Kingdom." The number of migrants crossing the Channel in small boats has now passed 10,000 this year, weeks earlier than last year, and in a massive blow to Sir Keir Starmer's pledge to smash the gangs. 450 migrants in 8 small boats made the crossing today, taking the total for the year so far to more than 10,300. The Prime Minister's spokesman said there are no quick fixes to illegal migration. He continued, "We were left with a broken asylum system." A former aide to Health Secretary Wes Streeting has been spared jail after exposing himself to a teenage girl and following her. 33-year-old Samuel Gould, who was also a counsellor in Redbridge, was seen by the 13-year-old girl masturbating in his parked car in Romford on March the 8th. Prosecutors said Gould then followed the girl, who hid and knocked on nearby flats to try and get help. Gould was sentenced to 22 weeks imprisonment, suspended for 2 years. And the BBC must act faster when staff cross the line. That's the verdict of a major workplace review. Commissioned after the Hugh Edwards scandal, the review stops short of calling the culture toxic, but says the broadcaster must intervene earlier and set clearer standards. It also reveals the BBC didn't do enough when issues were raised about figures like Tim Westwood and Russell Brand, and calls for urgent reforms to prevent abuse of power. Those are the latest GB News headlines. Now it's back to Chris.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Welcome back to GBN Tonight with me, Christopher Hope. Now, the murder of the Conservative MP Sir David Amess in 2021 shocked the country and served as a grim reminder of the dangers faced by our elected public servants simply doing their jobs. Today, that heartbreak has resurfaced for his family after footage from 2023 re-emerged of the Irish rap group Kneecap chanting, "The only good Tory is a dead Tory. Kill your local MP." Now, Conservative leader Kemi Badenoch has called for a police investigation. And Sir David Amess's daughter, Katie Amess, says the rhetoric is not only dangerous, but personally devastating, reigniting the pain of losing her father in such horrific circumstances. I'm joined now by the daughter of Sir David Amess, Katie Amess, who said she'd be willing to meet the rap group and have a conversation with them. Katie Amess, thank you for joining us tonight on GBN Tonight. What was your first reaction when you heard about this chant at this concert by Kneecap?
I was just absolutely heartbroken. I mean, you can't imagine the pain and the torment that myself and my family live through every waking moment. And to hear that people are thinking it was, well, this pop group is thinking it was a good thing, and that this should happen again, and that, you know, inciting people to hatred and violence is just absolutely devastating to me. And I mean, my dad was an innocent person that worked for the country for 38 years. He did not deserve to die, let alone in the horrible, terrible, violent way that he did. So to hear people lauding it and praising it and hoping that it will be done again is just absolutely shattering to me.
Kneecap haven't explained what they meant by this. It may have been that this was at the height of, you know, the Tories' collapse in office, that it was expressing frustration with politics. I mean, do you think they're absolutely, this group are saying go and kill an MP, or are they trying to just vent about frustration with the Conservatives?
Oh, I don't think they're trying to say it. They did say it verbatim. So that is a very dangerous rhetoric. You're speaking to thousands of people that are young, that are impressionable. It's not art. It is verbatim telling people to go on and commit a murder. It doesn't matter that they said a Tory MP. It could have been a Labour one, a Lib Dem one. It could have been a hairdresser. It could have been a builder. They were inciting to kill. And that should not be allowed, and it must be stopped. It is very, very dangerous, and we see the consequences when things aren't taken seriously. My father is no longer with us, and that is an absolute tragedy.
Words really matter, don't they? And that's the point here. And this group received public money, didn't they, from the state? Now, I think that's going to stop from now on, according to Number 10 today.
Well, I mean, it has to. I don't think there's any question about whether it should stop. You can't be funding people that have said to go out and kill people. It's just mind-boggling. That has to stop. That there's not a question about that. Yeah.
They also said in another performance in Kentish Town, up Hamas, up Hezbollah, and a Hezbollah flag being displayed. Do you think they're just attention-seeking, or are they trying to mean what they're saying?
I think probably a little bit of both. I don't know their intentions. I don't know them personally. But I mean, it's definitely got them in the news. Perhaps they weren't as well known as this before. I have no idea had no idea who they are. Now I do. It might just be clickbait, rage bait, whatever the words are called with the young people nowadays, that they get more likes and more followers. But it's not a game. It's not funny. No. This is serious. People actually have lost their lives, and we cannot have young, impressionable people being told to commit these crimes, because we saw what happened in my father's case. A young person self-radicalised. We saw what happened in Southport. It's stuff that's available on the internet. It's out there for people to access. And then they go on and actually do commit a crime. So I don't care if they're saying it was art or they were just trying to incense people. You don't do it in this way. It is an absolute disgrace.
Well, what would you say to the members of Kneecap if they're watching this?
I would say, imagine that if your dad went to work one day and was killed in the most terrible, violent way, and he was an innocent man. He didn't do anything wrong. He just stood up for his people and what he believed. How would you feel waking up every day to know that you would never see him again? He would never meet your children. He would never be at your wedding. It's ruined my life. It's ruined my family's life. It's not funny. And it's something that should be taken seriously. And my dad's memory and his legacy should be respected. And they need to apologise and think before they speak about the actions that could come from these horrible, horrible words.
I knew your dad, Katie, with my role covering politics for 20 years, and he was the most gentle, supremely gentle man, of course. And linking him to these violent words is horrific.
Very, very upsetting. And I don't want to be sitting here today having to drag it all up, and I don't want to still be fighting for an inquiry for him, and I don't still want to be going up against the police for not acting on the threat the night before. There's just so much wrong with society nowadays, and this is highlighting one small problem. We need to fix the country. We need to fix the young people. Otherwise, what hope do we have for the future?
Do you think lessons could be learned with having that inquiry you've been campaigning for? What is the current status of your calls for a campaign from the Home Office?
Well, currently Southport are having their inquiry, which is absolutely the right thing that should happen. Keir Starmer said I'm not allowed an inquiry because my case is different to Southport, but he doesn't want to get into the reasons why it's different with me. He said I can go away and ask Lord Anderson to come back with a list of questions which are still pending. Obviously, all the questions are pending. We don't know who let him go through the net, why they let him go, why nobody has been held accountable for this grave mistake. We don't know any of the answers. So Lord Anderson is currently trying to find some of those answers for us, but he won't be able to do that, I believe, because he doesn't have power in court to subpoena people to come in and actually answer the questions. He's going through a paper trail of a paper trail. So when I don't get the answers, which is what's going to happen, I will go back to Keir Starmer and I say, right, I did it your way. Now it's time to actually do the right thing and to have an inquiry and find out why this happened and to ensure that it never happens again. Because until we actually find out the answers to the failings, I'm telling you right now, this will happen time and time again.
And that is a terrifying thought. And you mean David Anderson, do you, the terrorism legislation expert? He's reviewing, is he? And then he'll come back with findings to find out if other answers are required. But there are lessons to be learned if you read across into the Southport case, aren't there? Could you attach your father's case to a different inquiry? Would that be any help?
He did also suggest that. Currently, we're being told, no, we can't do that. But I'm not going to give up, because if I give up, as I say, this is going to happen again. We need to find out who made the mistake to let him go back into the community, why he wasn't followed up on, and how he was free the next day after threats were reported to the police the night before, how he was free to then go and commit this terrible, terrible atrocity. And I'm not going to give up until I get those answers. No. Even if it takes me the rest of my life, I will definitely find out those answers.
Well, thank you for your time on this, Katie. A very difficult conversation, but thank you for raising awareness of it. And that was the daughter of Sir David Amess, of course, Katie Amess. Now, NECAP has previously said they are the victims of a coordinated smear campaign, they say. That was after their appearance at the American festival Coachella, when they projected the message EFF, Israel, Free Palestine, and led the crowd in a chant of Free Palestine. Now, that was referring to the war between Hamas and Israel. They added, for over a year, we've used our shows to call out the British and Irish government's complicity in war crimes. That's a statement from NECAP. Now, coming up, could Labour be opening up troops to the risk of prosecution if they're sent to Ukraine as peacekeepers? I'll be joined next by the Shadow Secretary of State for Defence, James Cartledge, who first sounded the alarm on this important issue.
What is the state of our economy? What is the state of our National Health Service? What is the state of our schools?
What on earth is going on?
Understanding Britain means understanding the state we are in. This is State of the Nation with me, Matt Goodwin, Wednesdays, Thursdays and Fridays from 8 p.m. on GB News.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
4.2 million people in this country are living in hygiene poverty. That means they are having to daily make a choice between putting food on the table for themselves and their family, paying the rent, paying their bills, and buying the basic everyday essentials we all rely on.
And there must be such a stigma attached to, well, there is, we know that, to hygiene as well, because this isn't talked about. I mean, we're talking here this morning, 1 in 12 British people have to make a decision between eating and washing, but we never hear about that, do we? It's not spoken about.
You're absolutely right. We have, scarily normalised the conversation about food poverty and fuel poverty in this country. And what my charity, the Hygiene Bank, wants to do is to take one step on that road to ending hygiene poverty by abolishing VAT on soap, treating it as the basic staple that we all, that we all need every day. It's the first line of defence against illness and disease, helps to keep us all safe.
It's a confidence thing.
as well, isn't it? If people are really struggling, and that can affect your confidence and mental health and all the rest of it, but if you also know there's even the slight possibility of not smelling fresh, for example, but I mean that can totally destroy you in a workplace.
Completely, and we hear every day about children who are bullied in school or who are not going to school because their uniform isn't clean or they feel stinky. They're being bullied by their peers. We know that 13% of people living in hygiene poverty have avoided work for exactly that reason. 9% of people have avoided going to a job interview, and that's so wrong because it is trapping you in your difficulties. Hygiene poverty is limiting life chances, it's blocking opportunities, it's stopping people find a way out of the hard times they find themselves in. And the thing that I always remind myself is that we're all actually only one step away from this.
GB News, the People's Channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/your say. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to GBN Tonight with me, Christopher Hope. Now, there are real fears that British troops could be prosecuted under the European Convention on Human Rights if they're deployed to Ukraine to keep the peace. Defence Secretary John Healey has dismissed calls for the UK to derogate from the convention after pressure from his Tory shadow, James Cartledge. Now, derogation means temporarily suspending certain legal obligations, in this case, for specific human rights protections for our soldiers. Without it, they could risk prosecution. And some fear that without a formal derogation in this way, Russia could exploit the situation by deliberately provoking confrontations and then using the ECHR to challenge UK forces through the British legal system. I'm really pleased to be joined right now by Colonel Tim Collins, the former British Army officer. He served with the SAS and also as a commanding officer of the Royal Irish Regiment before the invasion of Iraq in 2003. When his eve of battle speech to his soldiers was praised by President George W. Bush and made headlines around the world. Tim Collins, welcome to GBN Tonight. You're aware of this issue, are you? I wondered how veterans are feeling about it, and maybe if you're hearing about it from troops who could be deployed to Ukraine.
Well, I think that with the myriad of cases that are being levelled against the people in the British Army, for operations stretching back over 50 years and numerous theatres, there's no doubt that this will be weaponised by our enemies. It's an obvious weak point for the United Kingdom. We're not as robust with these things as other nations. And when you look at how the French have handled it and where they have derogated from the European Convention on Human Rights and the protection of their military, and even paramilitary organisations like Sinn Féin look after IRA members far better than the British government looks after soldiers.
It is shocking, isn't it? I mean, I should say, by the way, it's the Royal Irish Regiment was your regiment that you served in before the Second Iraq War. It's concerning, though, because it will limit, won't it, the freedom of action from troops being sent to Ukraine.
Well, I'm reminded by a veteran who said, they sent us to Ulster to be peacekeepers, and they're haunting us and hunting us 50 years after that. There is a certain attachment in this country to lawfare and to facilitate greedy lawyers, the likes of Phil Shiner, who can just throw anything they like at the military and find that there's feeble defence, and the military, the soldiers themselves, are left to defend themselves. More often than not, and the vast majority of cases, they're vindicated. But that often involves years of being hunted and dragged through the courts.
Often as old men. I mean, we're seeing that, aren't we, currently, with some of the issues having been seeing it recently with the Troubles, as you talked about there. Is the feeling, though, that troops being sent to Ukraine, they've got to know that the politicians back at home have got their backs, and that's under threat by this?
Well, I think fundamentally, when you look at what John Healey, the defence minister, is saying, he's saying that nobody worry, we're only being sent to Ukraine as part of a peacekeeping mission. And I'm reminded of what the Labour Defence Secretary John Reid said in 2006. He said that the British Army will probably come back from Afghanistan without a shot being fired. We lost over 400 people dead there.
It's a huge worry for so many people. I mean, do you know people who are being pursued now in this form of lawfare, as it's described? Maybe veterans you served with, Tim, in your time.
Oh, yeah. I mean, across numerous theatres, there's inquiries. Most of the inquiries in Iraq, thanks to Phil Shiner and the other rascals who went after those, have fallen on their arse long ago. But there's something like 20 veterans who are in the frame to be prosecuted for murder in Northern Ireland against heavily armed terrorists. And if we get into Afghanistan, Syria, Libya, there's hundreds of cases.
Yeah, it's a huge issue. And what's your message to, because surely if you were talking right now to John Healey, the Defence Secretary, Tim Collins, what would you be saying to him?
Well, the fact is that we've got a reasonably strong defence team in the government. What I'd say is stand up to the lawyers. Let them tell the lawyers that the feeding frenzy is over. You're going to defend your people. That's your duty. It's the government's first responsibility to defend its citizens. It therefore falls that the soldiers are citizens. They should defend the soldiers as well. Stand up to the government, John Healey.
And without that message to soldiers, do you think some may be reluctant to be deployed? I mean, I'm not sure if you can say, I won't go to Ukraine, to your commanding officer, Tim Collins. Perhaps you might know more than I do, but will there be a reluctance to be deployed?
Well, years ago, I myself was accused of war crimes and vindicated in that. But in the theatre itself, people who served there at the times after I departed told me that people just stayed in barracks. Everyone was afraid to go out. What people were really good at that stage was do nothing. Don't take a risk. Don't go out. And that's where they watched the control and the organisation and the goodwill we had with the Iraqis slipping away because people were terrified of doing anything wrong, and we lost it to the Iranian militias.
And that's obviously not how it should be. We want to see our troops being deployed, being active, using all the skills they've learned as part of their training, not cowering away for fear of some spurious case or even a real case sometime in the future. The rules of engagement need to be suspended for that reason, the rules of law.
For the lawyers, many of whom are close to government, it's an easy win. It's no win, no fee. Just go for it. You could make a fortune. And even if you don't prove anything, you'll still... Phil Shiner was flying people in from Iraq who lied in court. You know, you can go for it. There is no consequence.
Just finally, Tim Collins, I did think this loophole had been closed, by the way. I mean, I've been writing about this for many, many years in previous roles. I thought this had been closed, this loophole. Is that not the case?
It's not the case. I mean, the fact of the matter is that we can and should derogate. We've done it before from the European Convention on Human Rights. If we don't do that, we have to set out very clearly how we're going to approach this and how we anticipate any provocation by the Russians or their proxies in order to do this. Or better still, if we're going as part of a coalition, find out what the French are doing. They will look after their people far better than ours. Let's do whatever they're doing.
Tim Collins, thank you for joining us tonight. I'm very pleased to be joined in the studio now by Shadow Defence Secretary James Cartledge. You heard it there, didn't you, James Cartledge, from Tim Collins. Do what the French are doing. I mean, that says a lot, that we can't even defend our own troops in our own way without relying on what the French are up to.
Well, you know, the reason I wrote to John Healey asking him to consider derogating from the ECHR is precisely because, like Tim Collins, they're obviously incredibly experienced veteran. I've heard from many other veterans, including in my constituency, and because of my job as Shadow Defence Secretary, the concern they have. I mean, after all, we had all those vexatious claims from Iraq, but it was actually someone who'd served, it was a Falklands veteran who'd been in Northern Ireland as well on Operation Banner, who said to me, James, when we went to Northern Ireland, they told us that was a peacekeeping mission. And the day he told me that was when all the media coverage was that we would have a peacekeeping mission in Ukraine. And I felt then, hold on a minute, that's a pretty good point. How are we going to stop guys coming back from Ukraine, and the same thing being repeated, where many years later the investigations happen. I think that's what this is about. It's about boosting the morale of our military by showing them we've got their back, by giving them the strongest possible legal protection if they're sent to Ukraine.
Now, derogation from the ECHR, that means partial withdrawal from elements of it. I mean, we had years of rows about this relating to the Rwanda plan from your government and other things. Prisoner voting took 10 years to derogate from that. Can you do this very quickly?
Well, the key thing is, this shouldn't be particularly controversial, actually, in my view. This is not the debate about, rightly or wrongly, this is not the debate about whether you should even be a signatory to the ECHR. We're going to remain that under this government, clearly. But derogating is part of the ECHR. You're allowed to do that in certain circumstances, as you say. And a key one is a national emergency and war. So, for example, Ukraine has derogated since 2015, and that's because it has martial law. And to me, if we're thinking of sending our forces into a country that's derogated, an adversary who is not a signatory, we've got to think ourselves, how are we going to ensure our people are protected from lawfare? Because the other thing about lawfare, this is this abuse of legal process. The Russians are highly adept at it. We've seen Russian oligarchs in our own courts in London using lawfare to pursue journalists and others. So I think we've got to be extremely cautious, and my view is...
And that happened through our courts against veterans or those still serving.
Well, that was a journalist in particular. But the point is, we saw vexatious claims against service personnel in Iraq. I can't see how you could guarantee against that happening again.
Was that linked to ECHR then or not?
There was an ECHR judgment which extended the ECHR into overseas deployments in Iraq. That hadn't happened previously, so it can now apply overseas. And in my view, given other countries have derogated, Labour did, in fact, after 9/11, we should be looking at this, and I'm disappointed the Secretary of State's not going.
Why is John Healey then saying we don't need to derogate? Why is that?
Well, he wrote to me and he implied they're not going to derogate because we won't be involved in combat operations. We'll be involved, I think, in helping prepare the Ukrainian
away from the front line.
Which is, by the way, a big change from what was spun not so long ago, if you recall.
Well, we were told boots on the ground. We weren't told what that meant.
There's no question. The implication of Dara used the word spin was boots on the ground and so on. That's not the case anymore. It's clearly a downgrade in ambition, rightly or wrongly, and we still have a very strong consensus with the government in principle on supporting Ukraine. But on this specific point of whether we should send people out there, to me, if we do that, it seems extraordinary to think there won't be some kind of grey zone threat from the Russians, who are very skillful. So let's say, have a scenario, Chris, where there is some kind of sustained ceasefire and peace, and we decide we're going to send people. They're sort of underhand tactics, people who we might describe as terrorists or whatever, to create threats, to wind them up, to harass them in some way. I think that is highly likely, and if that is the case, we want to have our people protected as much as possible legally.
Tim Collins mentioned France there. Of course, other countries, part of the coalition are willing, are also signed up to the ECHR. What are they doing?
I don't know what other countries are intending. I can't speak for them.
It's worth looking at because it's all the same rules.
Totally. As France has derogated, but say we derogated under Labour in 9/11, but in terms of detention of terrorists. But we're now talking about a threat of war. Now, hopefully, we don't face a direct threat as a country, but at the end of the day, if this goes badly and Russia does decide to invade somewhere else, who knows where this could end up? I think it's, as Tim Collins said, we're reminded of what was said about Afghanistan, not a shot being fired. We need to be very cautious on the idea that our people could go out to Ukraine and somehow not face any threat.
Because mission creep happens, always happens.
And therefore, protect them as much as possible. And for me, given we can derogate and have done in the past, we should be looking at doing that again.
This is a big worry because what these brave troops want to know is that we've got their back in government. That's what you'd be saying.
Chris, look at what's happened in Northern Ireland. The thing that really concerns me here is we've got people who went out to Northern Ireland. They obeyed the orders they were given by the democratically elected British government at the time and their chain of command, and they followed those. And many years later, for serving their country, they are being harassed, chased through the courts, which is why I strongly oppose the idea of reopening all these legacy cases. But what it shows you is you must assume that there will be legal threat, and therefore, what are you going to do about it?
Is this fear affecting morale? And do you think that some troops may refuse to be deployed overseas?
I mean, we know what our people are like.
They'll do what they're told.
They'll do what they're told because they're patriotic, but they want to see the same from their government. What really gets me about this is you've got enough to worry about if you're deployed as a member of the armed forces without worrying that when you get home, you're going to get a knock on the door one day in the future from a lawyer or their representative. So I think we should be looking at this. I think it's entirely fair and reasonable. We should be derogating from the ECHR.
Be making quite clear where things stand.
Exactly.
Perhaps a letter or something to the troops.
And I just make a really important final point for anyone who's watching who isn't clear on this. If you derogate from the ECHR, you still comply with all UK law and with the laws of armed conflict, like the Geneva Convention. It doesn't mean if you derogate that you can shoot prisoners or something. You know, you cannot commit war crimes. The point is, it's the risk of those vexatious claims, which were found to be totally unfounded in Iraq. That's the sort of thing we want to avoid, and which the Russians may pursue.
Well, James Cartledge, the Conservative Shadow Defence Secretary, thank you for joining us tonight on GBN Tonight. Now, in response to James Cartledge's letter, the Defence Secretary, John Healey, had this to say: "We expect the highest standards of our service personnel and rightly hold them to account if they fall short of these expectations. Where the UK undertakes military action, it complies fully with UK and international law. We will give due consideration to the provisions of the ECHR as we develop the details of the Coalition of the Willing deployment." Thank you for your time again, James Cartledge. Now, who gets to vote in our elections? A big issue in this week of all weeks. A report by a pressure group is doing the rounds in Westminster, and it sparked outrage. It proposes that more than 4.4 million adults, including those who came to the UK illegally, should get the right to vote. What do you think? All of that to come straight after the break.
On Thursday, the 1st of May, voters across England go to the polls.
In a series of council elections.
Mayoral elections and one crucial by-election.
They'll vote on the local issues that matter to them and let the parties know where they stand.
We'll be here throughout the night.
Live around the country.
As the first results come in.
And from 6 a.m. on Friday morning, as it all becomes clearer, we'll be here to discuss what it means for you.
Vote 2025, the people decide, from 11 p.m. on Thursday.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
The royal family is an enduring symbol of tradition, unity and pride for Britain. At GB News, we celebrate what makes this country great. In our new royal newsletter series, you can join me, Cameron Walker, for Inside the Palace, an exclusive look every week that takes you beyond the gates and brings you the very latest from those at the heart of the monarchy. Never miss a royal moment again. Sign up now. Go to gbnews.com/royal newsletter and get the latest straight to your inbox.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight-talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it?
No,
because the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Dubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts.
This is GB News, the People's Channel.
Welcome back to GBN Tonight with me, Christopher Hope. Now, today, a new report was launched in the House of Commons, sponsored by Liberal Democrat MP We're at Hop House. Before I go to that, we're going to a quick conversation with my pal, Patrick Christis. Patrick Christis, what's on your show tonight?
Yes, well, I will be mentioning that, actually, Christopher, because apparently this might include new migrants or temporary migrants or maybe even asylum seekers that will be allowed to vote in British elections. Is that really OK? Strikes. Will we get a mega strike from NHS workers and teachers joining forces on the picket lines? Operation Scatter as well. The list of places that Labour and Serco might put asylum seekers in rental accommodation. Is it fair on hard-working Brits? Is it fair on the people of the North West, who seem to be disproportionately affected? Just a couple more quick ones for you. What's going on in the continent? Those power outages in places like Spain and Portugal. Initially, it was some kind of cyber attack, and now it appears it's this weird atmospheric weather event. Some people are actually blaming net zero. And in light of the Liberal Democrats coming out and saying they might fine people for playing music loudly out of one of these things, I'm holding my phone up now for our radio listeners. There's a list that's been published of things that annoy Brits the most. And actually, not picking up dog poo is the top of it, but there's some other ones up there. So I'm going to be talking about all of that and much more in a very lively show with a top panel, 9 to 11 p.m.
Patrick, sounds amazing. My main job at home in Hope Towers is picking up dog poo, so I do the worst job known to man. Thank you for joining us tonight. We'll be tuning in for that and more tonight on Patrick is Tonight. Now, thank you for that. Today, as I was saying earlier, a new report was launched in the House of Commons, sponsored by Liberal Democrat MP Weir Hop House. The report from the Migrant to Democracy Project proposes giving the vote to an additional 4.4 million people, including those who arrived illegally. The authors argue that limiting voting rights to British and Commonwealth citizens is currently, as is currently in the law, colonial, yes, that word again, and outdated. Should the right to vote be extended to anyone living in Britain, regardless of how they arrived? One man who disagrees with this proposal is the Shadow Education Minister and Conservative MP, Neil O'Brien, and he joins me now. Neil O'Brien, thank you for coming in. What's wrong with more people voting? Isn't that a good thing?
I think we have to have citizenship of this country mean something. I don't think that anybody who just happens to be in the country on the day that there's an election should be allowed to vote if they have no stake in the future of this country and may not even be here for a very long time. More generally, I think there is an issue that this country gives out citizenship much more readily than a lot of our European peers. For example, in Denmark, right, if you've committed a crime or if you become welfare dependent, you won't be on that path from arriving to citizenship. And I've been really glad that Kemi Badenoch's opened up a conversation about this, because we are.
You earn it, don't you?
Yeah, you've got to earn it in most of these other countries. And, you know, if you commit relatively small crimes, you aren't going to become a citizen. Whereas in the UK, you can get away with all kinds of stuff and still get the right to vote, get a British passport, get all the benefits, all these other things that come with citizenship. So I think citizenship needs to go back to meaning something. It has to be something you earned rather than something you just get handed out to you because you're here. And I think this idea that simply absolutely everybody should have the right to vote in our general elections, including those who have forced their way into the country illegally, is pretty appalling, really. You're rewarding people for doing the wrong thing. And I think there's a lot of politics behind this, to be honest with you. There's a lot of, like, we're just going to change the electorate to change the country, and I find that very disturbing.
Is it part of Brexit? There's also been talk about enfranchising younger people to vote for Remain and a future vote on our status.
It's not really Brexit-related in this case, because the majority of the people that the authors want to give the vote to would be coming from the rest of the world outside the EU. Keir Starmer, a few years back, as you remember, was proposing to give the vote to all EU citizens in this country. He seems, for now, to have backtracked under the pressure of the election. We are now about to do this migration deal with the EU, and we're going back into a kind of process of reintegration into the EU with Starmer. And so who knows what will happen to that old idea of his, which he was passionately in favour of only a couple of years ago. So we'll see what happens.
He wouldn't say it's reintegration. He would say it's just balancing and making it more of a workable solution on Brexit. You're smiling now for our radio listeners there, Neil O'Brien.
Look, I'm all in favour of working with our European friends, but I can see where this is going. You have a whole bunch of campaigns to rejoin. We're going to do a trade deal with them. We're going to have a migration deal with them. We're going to have and before you know it, you know, the whole thing's been undone.
Yeah. Now, you mentioned there the issue of migrant illegal arrivals. Now, earlier I spoke to Sir Keir Starmer and asked him about where he will house the over 10,000 migrants who arrived here illegally on the south coast. And here's what to say. Where are they all going to live? Will they be living in rented homes next door to GB News viewers?
This is a serious problem. The last government lost control of our borders, and it falls to us now to clear up that mess. I'm absolutely convinced that we have to take down the gangs that are running the vile trade of putting people into boats in the first place. That's why we're passing the Borders Bill, which will give our law enforcement much greater powers. The Conservatives voted against that bill, if you can believe it.
That was Sir Keir Starmer talking to me earlier for GB News, and we'll be speaking to Sir Ed Davey, the Lib Dem leader, tomorrow night, as well as Nigel Farage, the Reform UK leader, and of course the Tory leader Kevin Badenoch on Wednesday, ahead of the big day for voting on Thursday. But Neil O'Brien, you heard what you had to say there. Do you worry, though, that putting migrants in rented accommodation lets them settle there, basically, and then following from that, you may be an issue of getting rights to vote?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, since Keir Starmer took office, the number of people coming across the Channel has exploded. It's massively increased, and despite all his stuff about, smashing the gangs, ultimately the gangs are smashing him. There's more and more people coming. He said he would shut down...
He blames you guys. He blames the Tory party for that.
It has got literally worse under his time as Prime Minister. It was bad enough under us, and I think we should have been tougher, and I think we are now moving to a tougher position, which is good. But... he said he would shut all these asylum hotels. He's actually opening more hotels. He's also, on top of that, dispersing people out into rented accommodation. So you have British people paying their tax, their money being given to other people to compete with them in the housing market, and you're effectively getting marched on both sides.
They may have, you're a former housing minister, but they may have children trying to get a home, and then people arriving here illegally by a small boat get into homes that might go to their children. I mean, it's very difficult.
Yeah, despite having never paid into the system in their whole lives, they're effectively going straight to the front of the queue in many cases. And I think a lot of people find that wrong, and it is wrong. And the truth is that none of these problems and the ever-growing number of people invading the country across the Channel, it's not going to get fixed until we come out of the thicket of human rights law, which people like Sir Keir Starmer love, right? He's been a human rights lawyer his whole life. That is the thing he believes in most. And the only time you ever see his eyes really light up in Parliament is when he's talking about these things. He's not an economist by background. He's not a defence person by background. The thing he really loves and believes in is human rights law. And that is the problem. It is because people know that if they can just get to the UK, they will stay here by hook or by crook. And until we fix that, come out of all this stuff, we will not fix the problem, and more people will come.
Just finally, you're saying withdraw from the ECHR.
Yeah, I've said that for a long time.
That's your position, yeah, because of course that's debatable in the party itself, isn't it? Neil O'Brien, thank you for joining us tonight on GBN tonight. It's been great to see you in the studio again. Thank you for coming on. Later, I'll be joined by a legendary TV interviewer known for her conversations with the likes of Nelson Mandela and Amy Winehouse. Tonight, though, she'll be opening up about her final and most haunting encounter with Virginia Giuffre.
Dinner under the stars tonight?
That reminds me of our travel insurance.
You mean all clear skies?
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News travel destinations forecast.
Whilst the UK is going to be increasingly dry and sunny this week, parts of the Mediterranean are actually going to be slightly damper. Some showers to watch out for across parts of Turkey, and a brisk breeze running through the Aegean Sea will make it feel quite fresh for those Greek islands. A few showers in between the sunshine for parts of Italy, France and Spain as well, but it's parts of Portugal and down towards Madeira that are going to see some of the most unsettled conditions, some longer spells of rain and again some quite strong winds around. But away from there, there'll still be some sunshine elsewhere.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News travel destinations forecast.
Good evening. Welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. It'll feel like summer over the next couple of days with lots of sunshine, very warm for the end of April, and the winds will be light for most as well. High pressure is the reason why this chunky high dominating our weather patterns. We've had this weather front across northern Scotland. It's breaking up, but still providing some rain and drizzle across the Northern Isles through the nights, but tending to clear away from the mainland of Scotland. Generally, it's dry with lengthy clear skies. Bit of a breeze picking up along the south coast. Temperatures will dip down to single figures across parts of eastern England, in particular in rural spots, but many towns and cities holding in double figures. On to Tuesday, and basically sunny and really quite warm sums it up. As I said, there will be this breeze picking up initially on the south coast, Devon and Cornwall, getting quite gusty in the southwest at times, but elsewhere the wind's fairly light. Could be some early morning mist, but generally a sunnier day compared to today for Northern Ireland and much of southern and western Scotland. Still some thick cloud across Shetland, a little bit damp and drizzly here, particularly so in the morning, but even here I suspect that rain and drizzle will tend to fizzle through the day. Lots of sunshine then elsewhere, and with the help of that sunshine, getting stronger and stronger, of course, at this time of year. We'll see those temperatures ticking up. A warmer feeling day, particularly where it's sunnier for Scotland and Northern Ireland, but quite widely will be over 20 degrees Celsius, and through central and eastern parts of England, southern Wales, into the mid-20s, perhaps 25 or 26 in and around the London area. Wednesday could be warmer still. Again, a bit of a breeze blowing through the channel, bit of cloud maybe across Shetland, but not as thick as tomorrow's. Should be a dry day pretty much everywhere, and warmer still with light winds, feeling really warm as well for the last day of April, 26, 27. Warmer again across the south on Thursday.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, though.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
On Thursday, the 1st of May, voters across England go to the polls.
In a series of council elections.
Mayoral elections and one crucial by-election.
They'll vote on the local issues that matter to them and let the parties know where they stand.
We'll be here throughout the night.
Live around the country.
As the first results come in.
And from 6 a.m. on Friday morning, as it all becomes clearer, we'll be here to discuss what it means for you.
Vote 2025, the people decide, from 11 p.m. on Thursday.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to GBN Tonight with me, Christopher Hope. Now, I wanted to get through some of your views on the campaign that's urging Parliament to allow illegal migrants to vote. Roy said, giving the vote to people who came here legally is just plain wrong. A GB News viewer who didn't name themselves says if legal and illegal migrants are allowed to vote, they have to be registered. They have to have photo ID, which also means if they commit crime, they can now be identified and deported. Just a thought. And now some of your views on my conversation with Sir David Amess's daughter, Katie, on the controversial rap group Kneecap. Carol said, people have been jailed for so-called inciting racial hatred crimes, and yet this band are allowed to use such disgraceful lyrics actions. This country is in a mess! Exclamation mark. And Lucia says, I want Katie to know I loved Sir David Amess and still miss seeing his smiling face in Parliament. Well, we all do. Welcome back again to GBN Tonight with me, Christopher Hope. Now, my next guest is a famous TV interviewer known for her conversations with Nelson Mandela and Amy Winehouse, who ended up being a personal friend of the late Virginia Giuffre, who sadly took her own life last week. Daphne Barak, also a friend of Prince Andrew, met Ms Giuffre, who accused Prince Andrew and Jeffrey Epstein of sexual abuse years ago in a hotel. And this weekend, she revealed her last and what she described as haunting encounter with Ms Giuffre. I'm very grateful now that Daphne joins us to share it with you at home. Daphne Barak, thank you so much for joining us tonight on GBN Tonight. Describe your reactions when you heard the tragic news about Virginia Giuffre.
I was shocked. I was devastated. I won her trust, despite the fact that Sarah Ferguson, the Duchess of York, is a very close friend of mine, and it's very known that she also saved my life from cancer. And I'm close to the royal family. And of course, I did the only interview in jail with Ghislaine Maxwell, which, of course, Virginia and Ghislaine are big-time enemies, let alone Prince Andrew, right? So we met in a hotel in D.C. Alan Dershowitz, a famous lawyer, is a good friend of mine, and he asked, since we were in D.C., if my husband, Bill Ganasty, and I would keep him company. It was very emotional for him and his wife. He was deposing Virginia. Nobody knew about it. It was very discreet. And then he felt very good about the deposition. He felt that she was lying a lot of time. And he and his attorney, another famous attorney, Arthur Aidala, who is representing Elaine Maxwell right now in her appeal, was celebrating when Virginia walked into the lobby, and she felt the hatred, and our eyes locked, and the rest is history.
And of course, she tweeted in the past saying that she wasn't suicidal back in 2019. She filed then saying that I'm making it publicly known that in no way, shape or form am I suicidal. She made this known to her therapist and GP. And if something happens to her, she said then, for the sake of my family, don't let it go away and help me to protect them. What do you think happened here? Did her mental state worsen between 2019 and when you met her in April 2022?
I met a very different Virginia. I expected to meet a girl that won millions of pounds. I mean, frankly, from the Queen of England, I mean, it's a major victory, whether you believed it or not. And a millionaire who would spend their money. She invited me to her room. We stayed in the same hotel after I extended her champagne and chocolate. She was in a bathrobe. She was very overweight, very swollen. She probably finished 2 bottles of beers, like in a few minutes by the time I arrived. It was a very small room. She was in terrible pain. Her neck was painful, but she was in deeper pain. I did not meet a winner. I met somebody who was paranoid, somebody who was very... couldn't trust anybody, very lonely. She told me how lonely she was. I wouldn't, and she didn't want to leave her room. It was very suffocating, small room. She was scared to leave the room. And she was scared. She didn't want to go back to her children and her husband, which was surprising for me because I think it was the beginning of Easter and Passover, and we all left DC in a hurry, and she stayed there another 2 days. So that was maybe telling about her, that right now she's split from her husband and she lost access to her kids. But we continue to communicate, and her texts were always, on one end, very painful. She was always in the hospital and she had pain and everything. On the other end, she was always trying to do like a girly girl talk, like I'm so impressed with who you are hanging with. I'm so proud to be your friend. I mean, I want you to always continue to shed a positive light. So, I tell you one thing.
Some of those text messages I think you shared online, haven't you, Daphne? They are really, quite girly. They're kind of happy. They belie the person you're describing there vividly. I mean, she was obviously up and down. We're seeing someone scream now.
Well, she did send me texts, many more texts, and one of them did say that her lawyers, her legal team did not wish her to talk to anybody. They isolated her. She still trusted me, but his isolation, I think, was really killing her, and she was just dying. If you see one of the texts, she's saying I was celebrating a birthday for my husband, Bill, and Robert Kennedy Jr., who is the Secretary of Health right now. Yeah. There is a joint birthday, and she was like, I want Kennedy to be the president of the United States. What kind of drink should I send him? Yeah, of course, Kennedy stopped drinking, but
Daphne, if I can ask very finally, as someone who knew her, how should the world remember Virginia Giuffre?
I think she was brave, and I did tell Sarah Ferguson that I met her, and I told Sarah that I liked her. I think she was brave. I think it was a brave woman who was a victim, whether everything she said was truthful or not. That, many victims have this kind of issues. But I think that she was also pushed much. I didn't say too much, but much by lawyers and other interested people. And maybe it was too much.
Well, thank you, Daphne Barak, tonight for joining us. Thank you so much. And if you suffered any issues from this conversation, the Samaritans are here day or night, 365 days a year. You can call them for free, 116 123. Email them joe@samaritans.org or visit samaritans.org to find your nearest branch. Now, coming up, State of the Nation with Jacob Rees-Mogg. You're here, Jacob.
I am indeed, and we're going to be discussing, among other things, the EU reset, whether our fishermen are going to be betrayed, whether free movement's coming back by the back door, whether in a fortnight we'll be finding out that Labour is taking us back into the EU by default. It's really serious, and I want the Conservatives to say loud and clear that they will cancel any deal.
OK. Well, there we have it. Coming up next, Destination with Sir Jacob Rees-Mogg. But first, the weather. Here's Alex Deakin.
There will be a light breeze in the morning, leading to a warm front. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good evening. Welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. It'll feel like summer over the next couple of days with lots of sunshine, very warm for the end of April, and the winds will be light for most as well. High pressure is the reason why this chunky high dominating our weather patterns. We've had this weather front across northern Scotland. It's breaking up, but still providing some rain and drizzle across the Northern Isles through the night, but tending to clear away from the mainland of Scotland. Generally, it's dry with lengthy clear skies. Bit of a breeze picking up along the south coast. Temperatures will dip down to single figures across parts of eastern England, in particular in rural spots, but many towns and cities holding in double figures. On to Tuesday, and basically sunny and really quite warm sums it up. As I said, there will be this breeze picking up initially on the south coast, Devon and Cornwall, getting quite gusty in the southwest at times, but elsewhere the wind's fairly light. Could be some early morning mist, but generally a sunnier day compared to today for Northern Ireland and much of southern and western Scotland. Still some thick cloud across Shetland, a little bit damp and drizzly here, particularly so in the morning, but even here I suspect that rain and drizzle will tend to fizzle through the day. Lots of sunshine then elsewhere, and with the help of that sunshine getting stronger and stronger, of course, at this time of year, we'll see those temperatures ticking up. A warmer feeling day, particularly where it's sunnier for Scotland and Northern Ireland, but quite widely will be over 20 degrees Celsius, and through central and eastern parts of England, southern Wales, into the mid-20s, perhaps 25 or 26 in and around the London area. Wednesday could be warmer still. Again, a bit of a breeze blowing through the Channel, bit of cloud maybe across Shetland, but not as thick as tomorrow's. Should be a dry day pretty much everywhere, and warmer still with light winds, feeling really warm as well for the last day of April, 26, 27. Warmer again across the south on Thursday.
Expect a warm front, moving from the kitchen right through to the rest of the house. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Courtesy of Marquis Leisure, you could be driving away with this brand new Elnag Baron 560 motorhome. It comfortably sleeps 4, comes with skyroof, integrated kitchen and bathroom, and is worth over £67,000. And that's not all, as we'll also give you a further £5,000 in tax-free cash to make sure that wherever this motorhome takes you, it takes you there in style. For another chance to win the lot, text WIN to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message, or text BONUS to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB13 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 6th of June. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, please bring us up to date. Or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it? Because the failure is...
You're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff.
Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood.
So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight-talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the